A waitress secretly feeds a mute boy every day. One morning, helicopters land in front of her diner. The morning the helicopters came, the windows of Mercy's diner rattled like they were remembering every storm they'd ever survived, and for one long, breathless second, everyone inside froze as if the world itself had paused. Coffee rippled in white mugs, a spoon slipped from trembling fingers, and Mercy Bennett felt the familiar weight in her chest, the same weight she carried every day at dawn when she unlocked the door, whispered a prayer, and hoped kindness would be enough to keep her standing. Before the story unfolds any further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the quiet good people do when no one is watching, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach the hearts that need them most. Mercy had worked the graveyard shift at the diner for 7 years, ever since her husband passed and the world became a narrower place. Mercy's diner sat on a lonely stretch of highway outside a small Midwestern town, the kind of place truckers found at 3 in the morning and families passed by without noticing. It smelled of butter and coffee and something sweet that lingered from the pies she baked before sunrise. Mercy wore the same apron every day, faded brown with a frayed strap she kept sewing back together, because it felt wrong to throw away something that still worked. She believed in that, too, fixing what could be fixed, feeding what could be fed. Every morning at exactly 6:20, a small boy arrived. He never spoke. He never knocked. He simply stood near the window until Mercy noticed him. His name was Noah, though Mercy only learned that months after she began slipping him food. He wore the same gray hoodie regardless of the season, the sleeves too long for his thin arms. His eyes held a quiet watchfulness, like someone who had learned early that the world did not wait for children to be ready. Mercy noticed the way he flinched at sudden sounds, the way he counted his steps between the tables, the way he smiled only with his eyes. Noah never ordered. Mercy never asked him to. She would set a plate down on the far booth near the window, a sandwich cut into careful halves, a warm bowl of oatmeal sweetened just enough, a glass of milk filled to the line. She never charged him. She never told anyone. The diner barely scraped by as it was, and Mercy's tips often paid for those meals, but she told herself that hunger was heavier than money, and she could not ignore it. She had once been the one waiting quietly for help that never came, and she remembered how shame tasted worse than hunger. The challenges stacked up quietly, the way snow does before a roof gives way. The owner of the diner had warned her about waste. The power company had sent another red notice. Mercy's hands ached from arthritis that flared in the cold mornings. And still, every day, she fed Noah. She wiped the counter clean, refilled coffee, and pretended not to notice when customers stared at the silent boy eating alone. She pretended not to hear the unkind whispers. Mercy told herself that goodness did not need an audience. One morning, the sound came before the sight, a low, chopping thunder that rolled across the flat land like an approaching storm. Mercy looked up from the register as shadows swept across the floor. Outside, dust lifted in spirals. 2 black helicopters descended onto the gravel lot, blades slicing the air, their presence so sudden and so wrong that the diner felt smaller, fragile, as if it might be blown away. The door swung open with a rush of wind, and men in dark suits moved with purpose, scanning the room. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks hovered in the air. Mercy's heart hammered. She thought of permits, inspections, of unpaid bills and quiet rules broken for the sake of a hungry child. She thought of Noah. Her gaze flew to the booth by the window. He sat stiffly, hands folded, eyes wide but calm, as if he had always known something like this would happen. One of the suited men approached him gently, kneeling to his height. Mercy felt the room tilt. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped forward, fear burning hot behind her ribs. Whatever this was, she would not let it swallow the boy who trusted her. The truth unfolded not with shouting or handcuffs, but with gravity. The man who entered last carried himself differently, his posture heavy with authority and restraint. His name was Daniel Whitaker, a name Mercy would later hear on the news, spoken with reverence and curiosity. He was the boy's uncle, guardian by blood and by promise. Noah's father, a decorated pilot, had died in a training accident months earlier. His mother had followed soon after, her heart giving out under grief that no one saw coming. Noah had stopped speaking the day of the funeral. He had wandered from foster home to foster home, slipping away when the walls grew too loud, until he found Mercy's diner and a woman who fed him without questions. The helicopters had come because Daniel had been searching across states, tracing sightings of a silent child who vanished at dawn. He had mobilized resources not out of arrogance, but desperation. When he finally saw Noah sitting in that booth, crumbs on his plate and a warmth in his eyes that had been missing for months, Daniel understood something he had not before. The boy had not been lost. He had been found. Mercy stood there, hands shaking, expecting blame, expecting consequences. Instead, she saw tears gather in a man who carried the weight of command. He looked at her apron, her tired eyes, the careful way she stood between him and the boy without even realizing it. He learned of the meals, the quiet mornings, the faith stitched into small acts. The room breathed again. Someone cried softly. The helicopters waited, engines idling, as if even they sensed the importance of what had happened inside that small diner. Life did not transform in a single cinematic sweep, but it did change. The power bill was paid, quietly and fully. The diner's roof was fixed before winter. Business picked up as word spread, not of helicopters, but of kindness. Mercy never asked for recognition. She returned to her routines, baking pies before dawn, praying over the coffee pot, believing still that small good things mattered. Noah left that day with his uncle, wrapped in a jacket too big and a future uncertain but safer. Weeks passed. Mercy missed the quiet presence at the booth by the window. She wondered if she would ever see him again. Then one morning, a letter arrived with a child's careful drawing inside, a diner with a woman behind the counter, sunlight streaming through a window. Beneath it, a single word written in uneven letters. Thanks. Near the end of this story, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe so these stories of hope can keep finding their way into the world. Mercy pinned the drawing behind the counter, where she could see it when mornings felt heavy. She understood then that feeding a child had fed something in her, too. That faith was not loud. That miracle sometimes arrived by helicopter, but more often by a plate slid quietly across a table. Before this story ends, please leave a comment sharing what kindness means to you or a moment when someone's quiet goodness changed your life. The helicopters never returned, but their echo stayed, a reminder that even the smallest acts can call down the sky, and that love, given daily and without applause, has a way of being seen at exactly the right moment. In the weeks after the helicopters disappeared beyond the horizon, Mercy's diner returned to its familiar rhythm, but Mercy Bennett did not. The clatter of plates sounded louder, the silence at the window booth felt deeper, and every sunrise seemed to pause just a little longer, as if the world itself was waiting for something more to happen. Mercy told herself this was how endings always felt, quiet, unfinished, heavy with memories, but her heart refused to believe the story was over. She kept Noah's booth clean every morning. No one asked her to. No sign marked it special. Yet she wiped it slower than the others, straightened the napkin holder just so, and poured a small glass of milk she later poured back when no one was looking. Old habits cling to the heart, especially the ones born of love. At night, after locking up, Mercy sometimes sat alone in that booth, hands wrapped around a cooling mug, wondering if Noah was eating enough, if he was warm, if he still flinched at loud sounds. The diner began to change in ways Mercy never expected. A local paper ran a short piece about an unnamed waitress who helped a lost child. Customers started tipping more, lingering longer. Truckers brought friends. A pastor from a nearby church stopped by every Sunday morning, leaving encouraging notes with folded bills tucked inside. Mercy felt embarrassed by the attention, but she also felt something she hadn't felt in years: support. It was as if the kindness she had quietly given had circled back, multiplied, refusing to let her stand alone anymore. Still, there were nights when fear crept in. Mercy worried that without Noah, her purpose would fade again into survival mode. She worried that the goodness she'd clung to would slowly leak out through unpaid bills and aching joints. Faith is not a constant flame. Sometimes it flickers, sometimes it hides beneath ashes. Mercy knew this, but knowing did not always make believing easier. Then, one late afternoon in early spring, when the sky was heavy with rain and the diner smelled of fresh bread, a familiar vibration passed through the windows, not thunder, not helicopters, but something gentler. Mercy looked up as the door opened. A man stepped inside, no suit this time, just a dark jacket and tired eyes softened by hope. Beside him stood a boy, taller now, cleaner, his hoodie replaced with a blue coat. Noah. The diner went still again, but this time the silence felt warm. Mercy's breath caught in her throat. Noah looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, his lips moved. The sound that came out was barely more than air, but it landed in Mercy's heart like a miracle. Her name. Just once. Just enough. Daniel explained quietly, respectfully, that Noah had been in therapy, surrounded by patience instead of pressure. The doctors said speech would come when safety felt permanent. Mercy understood that language better than any professional ever could. She had lived it. She had fed it, one meal at a time. Noah returned often after that day. Not every morning, not forever, but enough. Enough to remind Mercy that some connections do not disappear, they evolve. He sat at the booth by the window, doing homework, drawing pictures, watching the world without fear. Sometimes he spoke, sometimes he didn't. Mercy never rushed him. She never needed words to know she had mattered. Months passed. Seasons turned. Mercy's diner became a place people talked about not because of helicopters, but because it felt safe. Because the coffee was strong, the food was warm, and the woman behind the counter looked at people like they belonged somewhere. Mercy learned that kindness is not a single act, it is a way of standing in the world, even when your legs are tired. One evening, after closing, Mercy locked the door and stood by the window booth one last time before heading home. She touched the edge of the table, smiled softly, and whispered a prayer of gratitude, not for recognition, not for miracles, but for the simple truth that love, once given, never truly leaves. And if this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that even small acts can change lives, please like, share, and comment to help spread this message of hope. Sometimes the world doesn't need louder voices. Sometimes it just needs more mercy.